If you want to train children to focus and be attentive, then start with something they care about.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
Now, Dr. Kathy, there's new research from the Department of Psychology and the Faculty of Arts and Science that finds that children learn just as much when they're trying not to, more than adults. Adults, on the other hand, tend to ignore information that they aren't paying attention to. The findings are outlined in a new study published in the journal Psychological Science, and they tested how much children and adults learned about drawings of common objects after two different experiments. The first experiment, they told participants to pay attention to the drawings. In the second experiment, participants were told to ignore the drawings and complete an entirely different task. After each scenario, participants had to identify fragments of the drawings as they saw as quickly as possible. The children learned about the drawings just as well across both scenarios, but adults learned more when they were told to pay attention to the drawings. In other words, the children's learning wasn't negatively impacted when they weren't paying attention to the information that they were tested on. The research has really potential to influence how parents and teachers and curriculum designers think about how kids and adults learn. For instance, for children, the findings underline the benefits of play and immersive learning. And for adults, defining a clear task or goal at the beginning of a class or a workshop is really important for the learning outcomes. Now, Dr. Kathy, the researchers highlight that paying attention really is a learned skill. And I want to ask you, do you think this has to do with attention focus, or does it have to do with, wonder, where, kind of adults are often directed to really pay attention to things that they're instructed to do, but kids walk into the room not really having that in their back pocket. Nobody's told them that yet, kind of, it maybe to the same degree. They haven't been trained in that way. So they have a different sense, a sense of awe and wonder that the whole room is really some place to understand and explore. Essentially, kids wonder and adults have been trained to be directed to focus. Should we drive kids away from wonder and get them to focus more? Is that part of, adulting or maturing? Or can there be a place where we want our kids to retain awe and wonder so that they do, learn even when they're not instructed to learn? That's kind of what I'm taking away from this. What do you think about this?
I think it's fascinating. I think both are important. I think, this idea of wondering and having that creative thought that can go anywhere is really important, really significant, really a learned skill and a given ability for some kids. And then obviously I do think it's important that we're able to focus and, get the answer right and get our work complete. So it's interesting, they use pictures. And so not everybody is oriented toward design and pictures and remembering that. That's a factor for me. I also think that the fact that, now hang with me here, Wayne, the fact that the children did as well when they were told to pay attention as they did when they were not told to pay attention might mean that they just couldn't do it well.
They couldn't do the other thing well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they didn't know what it meant to focus on this or pay attention to this. I've actually been privileged to teach children about focus. I do an example of, find something in the room to look at. Not me, but find something in the room to look at. And so they find something to look at. And then I say, okay, now focus on it. And then I ask them, what changed for you? And it's fascinating because and I do it with adults. When I ask adults to move from just look at it to focus, when I say focus, they'll tell me they go from top to bottom, from left to right. They analyze shape, color, design, size. They compare it to something they know. It's very different. So the vocabulary words really do matter. So I'm fascinated by that.
What happens when kids when they do that? What happens to the kids when you tell them to focus?
They the shoulder shrugs. There's an intensity even to their face. And again, they give me the details. They go from top to bottom, left to right. They notice the color. I've had kids say things like, well, I just thought it was blue, but then I realized it was aqua. I've had kids say, well, I noticed that the top is bigger than the bottom, so I'm actually surprised it didn't flip over because most things would be bigger on the bottom. They get really specific. So you can focus. Now, do kids know why to focus? Do they, no, if you told kids, focus on this well enough that you'll get it right so that you can earn $25, I think they'd all do it just fine, right? So again, it's motivation, it's intent. There's a lot to the study that's fascinating to me. I don't think it means that we don't tell them to focus. I don't think it means we don't expect them to focus. I do think it does show what you pointed out, which is that they might be more capable of doing some type of multitasking. Although multitasking doesn't really ever work, we are semi-tasking, jumping back and forth from things. Maybe they're creative and they were able to handle the creativity that was necessary for them to be kind of doing two things at once. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I love that, Dr. Kathy. There's some reading that you've turned me on to on this subject. So it's kind of sparking some curiosity for me, partly because I oftentimes wonder if we, redirect kids to focus incorrectly. Kids are naturally curious. And I think that there's something inside of that natural curiosity that, and I don't know if I'm like too off base here, but I think sometimes in the Western world, we focus so much of maturity and development to really being, I would say, efficient or maybe even productive. And I think that kids have this natural curiosity of being in the moment and even understanding what that means to be in the moment, that there's joy to be had here. There's not something to look forward to because they're not the ones driving the car. They don't tell us when play date time is over, right? Kids just kind of are there. They're fully there. They're fully present. And so I oftentimes wonder, is it healthy for us to push kids to move beyond that sense of awe and wonder? Or should we help them develop that sense of awe and wonder? So an example for me would be, I want you to sit down and we're going to work on this math problem. And rather than working on the math problem, we sit there and we get curious. I wonder if there's more than one way to solve this. Here's one way to add up 12 plus 12 and we carry the numbers. Do you think there's another way to add up 12 plus 12? And I don't want to get into like the different, ideas behind math and some of the common core things that were trying to be done within that, right? But I do get to this place of, do we push kids too hard to get to a place where they're just focused and focus, and we drive them away from curiosity when really maybe we should be calling them to develop curiosity in a healthy way? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's both ends. I think it's very necessary to expect focus and teach them how, whether your children are ADHD or ADD or not, because they are creative and the mind is going quickly and there's much in the room to look at or whatever, to train them to take all thoughts captive, to, you know, be looking forward, to have a goal in mind. I need to remember the 5 most important things the teacher says, whatever, to teach focus, not expect it, but to teach it and train it into our children, whether they're, homeschooled or in a different school model. I do think that's important. I also absolutely believe that we should celebrate their natural God-given curiosity and their natural imagination that we squelch. This is one of the reasons that children like school better when they're young, because there's more play, there's more inventiveness, there's more group dynamics, there's more unique things that we tend to do. And then the older they get, the more it is sit still, turn to page 72, here's the worksheet, here's your sharp pencil. And there's a place for that. But to do it both, right? And this is, again, the freedom that people have as homeschoolers to often be able to balance well the need for focus on exact answers and then also the need for the creative thought and the creative wonder. I would want children to be able to do both well, and ideally for them to know when it's appropriate to do either thing, like to sit and realize, oh, I'm going to have to focus, but not do it negative. Oh, I'm going to have to focus. No, I get to focus now. She said it's 20 minutes. I can do that. Mom and dad have helped me learn how to focus for 20 minutes. That's not the end of the world, and then later today, I'll be able to play or be imaginative or be creative. Balance is good, right?
Yeah, I think that's helpful, Dr. Kathy. As we close out, I just might want you to consider this with us. We talk a lot about the 8 smarts, kind of helping understanding a little bit of how kids look at the world and understand the world and really naturally kind of engage the world, how they're naturally smart in the world. You talk a lot about awakening the smarts. And if you were going to maybe awaken this idea of, we talk about kind of awakening wonder, but wonder's natural for them. How would you maybe awaken the sense of paying attention to them? How do we, guide kids into a place where, they're able to do this? They're able to pay attention and kind of, have some sense of that. How do we awaken that inside of kids?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we do it best and most efficiently with content they care about. If you're gonna teach them to focus, don't teach them to focus on something boring and hard that they think is irrelevant. In other words, school topics, right? Which too many kids think, "Oh, this is boring, hard, and irrelevant." That's not true. If everything they're learning is that, they should be in a different school. So, if you wanna train children to focus and be attentive, then start with something they care about. How is chocolate, created? How was your favorite cereal invented? What's the difference between a waffle and French toast? Or, where on a cow, where does a ribeye come from? Where does a fillet come from? I mean, I don't know. I'm making this up as we go, but find the things that your kids care about. The trombone and the trumpet, and the violin and the viola, and the letter B and the letter D. I mean, just talk about things they care about. They will pay attention to those things and affirm them. Affirm them for body language and eye contact and curiosity and teachability and, the efficiency in which they're able to work. And then compliment them and affirm them. Say, you are learning to pay attention. You're learning to concentrate longer. Like, what's pay attention mean? You're learning to concentrate longer before your mind goes off into the boonies, right? Or whatever. And I'm proud of you. And that's the skill your teachers need you to use at school. And you're capable of doing it.
What Dr. Kathy had to say today was really insightful. It reminded me of some passages that come out of Judges chapter 6. I'll begin reading at verse 11. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joshua the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied. "But if the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened to us? Where are all the wonders that our ancestors told us about? And when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord's abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength that you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, "I'll be with you, and you will strike down the Midianites, leaving none alive." Gideon lived at a time when Israel was oppressed by the Midianites. He considered himself really too weak and insignificant to lead any kind of deliverance for them. And an angel of the Lord appeared to him while he was secretly threshing wheat in a winepress and called to him, "Man of mighty valor." Gideon's disbelief really gave way to awe as God confirmed his calling through miraculous signs, even miraculous signs that Gideon experienced later in life. I think the awe and wonder that Gideon experienced really reinforces his identity and his purpose. I mean, initially fearful and doubtful, Gideon was overwhelmed really by the reality of God's presence and his promise. Seeing God at work moved Gideon from hiding to really leading an army, although it was a really small one, and he fought the Midianites. He had newfound courage that stemmed from wonder of God's power, which shaped him into the leader and judge that God intended him to be. Sometimes when our kids are staring out the window, when they're seemingly not focused on what we're talking about, it might be wise for us to ask them, "What are you wondering about? What is making your mind go to places where you're not really focused on this?" And I think doing it in a way that maybe doesn't have a tinge of anger or frustration, but instead just wants to know, can really help give kids courage to wonder about where they could be or where maybe God is calling them, wonder about some big problems that people are experiencing in the world, and wondering how they could be used by God to fulfill them. Gideon's awe and wonder really stemmed from his wonder if this was really God, and then awe that God was here and working. It seems like that's just a constant undulating rhythm that Gideon finds himself in, wondering if God is really real, wondering if God is really true. And then once God reveals himself, stepping in with confidence to wonder what else God could do. That could be such a fun place for our kids to be, a place of curiosity that grows their questioning about God, and as God answers and meets them, that they grow into more confidence and they step out and actually exercise their faith. I think an exercised faith is really the light that shines and cuts through some of the darkest times. I hope that's an encouragement to you, and I hope this podcast and all that we do at Celebrate Kids is an encouragement to you. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Koch, my name is Wayne Stender. Thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.